For over 20 years, the Fire Store has equipped first responders with the best in firefighting gear. Discover seasonal savings on the gear you trust and visit thefirestore.com to shop everything but the truck.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of everyone's favorite podcast, everyone's favorite radio show, everyone's favorite afternoon and evening and late night. Well, late night is a different show with less clothes. But anyway, this is everyone's favorite podcast. It's the Larry Conley Radio Show. And I, of course, am the more handsome David Conley. But let me introduce you to our fearless leader, to the one everyone is here to see, and most because he owes you money. But here he is, ladies and gentlemen. It's Deputy Chief of Training, retired Larry Conley.
Please.
That's the best sound effects we can come up with for the uproarious applause from the stadiums of fans.
Right. Yeah. I haven't heard that applause since I was trying to pay my way through college. There's Chocolate Thunder over in East St. Louis over there, but
in the boom boom room.
Yeah, in the boom boom room. So you don't want to know about that. But I've repented. So I can't disclose. So lucky they didn't have YouTube and stuff back then, because I'd be trying to climb out that hole, right, even today. But and today, if I got on stage for a little extra money, it'd probably be more like, put it on. Put it on.
It'd be like a clothing drive.
They throw money, they be throwing clothes at me. Like,
right, throwing coats.
Really, put this on, please.
Exactly.
Cover that up. Nobody wants to see that. Anyway, thank you. Welcome to another exciting episode of our show. We all know it as the Larry Conley Radio Show. We might end up changing that, because back in the day when we first started back in '59, it was just radio. People had the big Philco radio, and they sat around the table there, and families would listen while they having their dessert after their meatloaf and everything. But we've evolved since then. We're going to have a podcast, and podcast is visual. And I know back in the day, probably little Billy and all the people who wanted to be firefighters were like, man, if just one day they can, I wish we could just see these guys. I mean, they're so intriguing, so funny, so informative. Maybe one day they'll invent something like, I don't know, a podcast, if you will, and we could see them actually. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's here. It's happening right now. And even though I'm being kind of funny and tongue in cheek, David, that's really how things have happened for real. David and I growing up, big movie buffs and cartoon buffs, and we watched stuff like James Bond, and James Bond would be doing stuff like talking on his watch, and by golly, that's what we're doing now. The Jetsons were, we're doing everything on the Jetsons except flying cars and
video
and they
calls.
got prototypes. It's funny, So art imitates life for real. So it's just a matter of time, cats and kittens, before that kind of stuff happens. But nonetheless, this is some Jetson type stuff happening right now. Now I don't remember seeing too many black people on the Jetsons, but that's another story.
It's a different show. Yeah, that was the Jeffersons, but that was a little further behind.
To the east side of space. Space sprockets.
Right. So his wife Wheezy.
So anyway, but the bottom line is we're here now, and we always have a good time and always have great guests, and we've been lucky for almost 15 years of doing this, is that we've had a good time and always great guests, always a great show and great feedback when we do it. So we want to keep the ball rolling, keep things moving. Recently, we were up in beautiful downtown East Dubuque, Illinois, and right across from Dubuque, which is in Iowa. And we got up there Friday evening and had a nice drive up, and spent all day Saturday with some great people in the East Dubuque Fire Department. And so we had Rescue and the Leader inside of you, the East Dubuque experience. And it was a great people, great energy. And it was a great mix because I mean, David and I have been to a lot of different mixes of audience, but this was a unique mix because it was a small town feel, but it was a really big heart and big investment of the participants. And usually, a lot of times, if you show up and people don't know what to expect, sometimes they're a little cold at the beginning, not mean or anything, just like, well, what are these guys going to tell us about, And from the onset, everyone here was just really leaned in. It must have been Chief Haig must did a really good job of advertising us or something like that, because people leaned in right away. We felt the love right away, and it was easy to just come out swinging. And sometimes with me and David, it's a professional, on stage and on film. And even though I've been doing it for a while, it's still a personal, and it's full disclosure sometimes. Even though I've done these presentations hundreds of times and maybe even thousands by now, I still get that butterfly feeling like I got to read the room. I got to fill them out. I got to see what works, see what jokes work. And some things are hit, some things might fall a little flat. And until I kind of get my footing, I'm still kind of like trying to, what works here, whatever. David, it doesn't bother David because he's used to, the ebbs and flow of audiences. But he always tried to tell me, like, hey, get your stuff together, buddy. Come on, you're okay, But we didn't have to do any of that this time. It was like, right off the bat, we felt warm, and it was a very welcoming environment, and it got better. A lot of times we start out cold and it gets better, and we get our footing and we figure out what works. But this started from the beginning, right off the bat, and continued to improve and get better as the presentation went along, and people started getting aha moments a little earlier. And by the time we started taking breaks and lunches, we started, getting some feedback that, hey, I think we're kind of reaching and communicating our message in a way that making people think. We don't expect it to have, we're not, we don't have any huge expectations, in the sense that we gonna come in and say something, you're like, wow, we're gonna change our lives right now. That never happens to anybody. However, you can feel inspired, and the impact is probably going to be happening more down the line as this stuff sinks in, as it being reinforced by Chief Hyman and Chief Haig here. And you guys should start a company too, Hyman Haig. Anyway, that's a story, right? But you're going to feel the impact more, after we're gone. And so that's going to be the true testament of whether we teach, did it work or not, on how well this sustains when we're gone. And, follow up, we can come back and kind of reinforce some points or kind of pull some things out. David and I usually do a general presentation of our whole thing. And then a lot of times people will call us back and say, hey, this part of your presentation is something I think we really could use to reinforce some things that's unique to our department. Can we talk about that more? And then we can kind of extract that section of it and then really have a whole nother, session on that particular thing just to reinforce. So that's another unique thing about our particular brand of teaching, is that we can tailor it to whatever you need based on that. So it can have just reinforce and support the impact that you desire. But overall, a very exciting experience. We had a good time, good feedback. The stew during during the break. I mean, during the lunch break.
Lunch,
And
yeah.
there was some good stuff, and and while we were eating, people were able to during lunch. They was able to stew on what we talked about that morning. So
I see what you did there.
it was even better. So I mean, it all worked together. It's amazing how things came together without even planning. And then went out that night and had a great dinner and some great conversation as well, in reflecting on the day. So we drove back with a pretty good feeling that we did, and we came and we really helped. We was happy to serve and continue to serve. But I wanted to, based on some of the conversations that we had that were pretty organic about about how much things help. I want to kind of recap, because what Dave and I've done in the past, we'll talk. Somebody, we'll get evaluations or conversations afterwards, and we never really capture it. We it's good for us, or we may have it on paper, but having it filed away on paper or just a conversation is good for us to know how we can continue to improve, or what kind of impact we had. But I know we've said more than once in the past, man, we should have probably followed up with this with a podcast or something, so we understand what we were saying. Because it's one thing for us to say, we went to East Dubuque and they said this, and we have no reason to fib about it. However, I think it's better when it comes from the horse's mouth, so to speak.
Agreed. Yeah.
So I'm glad we had the presence of mind this time to say, hey, instead of saying what we should have did, we actually can do it. And our two guests here today were willing to come back on and help us have that conversation. So today's conversation is going to be the East Dubuque experience, rescuing a leader inside of you. We're going to talk to the two gentlemen that brought us there, the visionaries of Chief Joe Heim, who was the fire chief in East Dubuque. And they're doing a lot of progressive things. They got a great firehouse being built. And he's just very, has a lot of vision, very focused. So I was happy to finally meet you in person. And then, of course, our good friend and partner, the Chief Right Reverend Dr. Craig Haig. So, and his beautiful wife was there too. Well, she said, "Don't call me Elizabeth. Call me Beth." And participated. I mean, it actually one scenario with David. I was like, they threw her to the wolves, like, you go up there and do it.
No love.
But she had them dead. I was like, man, I came back from the bathroom. I was like, what's she doing up there? But
she did a great job.
Yeah, so we see why Chief Haig stays in order.
Now you understand. Yep.
Right. Now I get that's a secret right there, brother. Ain't nothing like a partner and a wife and the soulmate who knows how to, back your play and be a partner in crime when it comes to matters of negotiation, matters of the heart, and whatever. So, so we just want to talk about the real world impact of the personal leadership development on the small town fire department with a big heart. That's what we kind of threw that in. Sounds like good tagline advertisement for you guys. You heard it here first, folks. Right. So anyway, so that's our guest. You could briefly introduce yourselves and kind of give us a short history. I know we know about Chief Haig, and of course you can, for people who don't know you, I don't know who doesn't know you in the world of Haig Solutions and all, but you can give us a brief name. And what's your association with the East Dubuque, and then of course Chief Heim, he's the secret weapon in that department. So kind of give us a little brief introduction of you guys, and then we'll get started with these intriguing questions that we've come up with to help have a great conversation. So whichever one of you guys want to start.
Well, I can jump in, and then we'll turn it over to the chief and let him run. I appreciate the opportunity to be back with you guys. We're friends and have been on the show many times with you, so it's good to be back. Um, it's like home for me to get the opportunity to spend time with you guys. So I appreciate that. Folks that know me know I retired fire chief out of the Chicago area, and own a consulting business, Big Solutions, do a lot of work internationally. Have done work in different countries as well as across the country here in the U.S., trying to help fire departments be successful. But my interaction with East Dubuque is kind of unique. When I decided to retire as the full-time fire chief here in Hanover Park, I wasn't really ready to give it up. We had worked really hard on succession planning, and it was time for me to transition out and for those that were ready to move into leadership positions in our organization. But I wasn't ready to simply walk away from the fire service. And Chief Heim and I have been dear friends for many, many, many years, and I've had the opportunity to work with East Dubuque Fire Department, helping them with strategic planning and training and things like that. So when I got ready to retire, I called the chief and said, I got a proposal. What I would like to do is I would like to join East Dubuque as a volunteer. I don't want any rank. I don't want to be an officer. I don't want to do any of that. I want to be a firefighter and a paramedic. And what I'll do is that I'll do my absolute best to drive over to East Dubuque once a week, do a 24-hour shift. And what I want to do is let me swirl the toilets, let me run the vacuum cleaner, let me go on calls, whether that's working on a patient in the back of the ambulance or driving the fire engine or whatever you need me to do. And then along with that, if I can help you based on some of the expertise and experience that I've developed over the years or had the opportunity to work through, well, I want to pour that into the organization, and I'll help you in any way that I can. But there's no expectation of me being in a leadership position. In fact, I want to wear a black helmet and look out the back of the cab, and I'll be just as happy doing that as anything else. And so Chief Heim was very gracious, as was the rest of the organization, to welcome me and say, we'll take you. Come on over and join us as a volunteer. So that's what I get the opportunity to do. I started this career as a volunteer, and after 42 years, I'm back being a volunteer. So it's a closing of a circle for me, and I love that chance to be with this great organization. So that's a little bit of my interaction with this place.
Cool.
All right. It's great to be on your show. I started in 1993 right out of high school with the East Dubuque Fire Department. Worked my way up through the ranks. I became chief in East Dubuque in 2001. And I was fortunate enough to get hired by the Rock Island Arsenal Fire Department and served there for 23 years before retiring. So I got the ability to do both career and volunteer, and I still enjoy doing the volunteer stuff today. Our department has been very progressive in the way of they're always willing to try new ideas, and that's what's helped us. And then bringing Chief Hagan to the mix back in the early 2000s with some training that we had at in houses that were bought out by the government in the floodplain, we were able to do some of that, and then we built that relationship, and I brought him in 2011 or 12 when we started doing strategic planning. And that really, I believe, catapulted our department in a way that not many have been able to do. And we've been very successful in that. We've been able to build everything up to where we are today, and that allowed us to bring outside speakers in to help our department out through the years. So that's kind of the little bit of the background on me.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. And sound like what you guys, you put your two heads together. East Dubuque has a bright future as far as being progressive enough to keep up. You can rival any department, whether it's volunteer or paid. And also, one thing I've learned, and the reason I love not just life in a sense, but in life and learning, but life and learning in the fire service, different people have different impacts on you. I've got tons of friends, some well known, some not so well known, who've taught me a lot in the fire service. But if I could put one thing on Chief Haig that I've learned, is that succession planning. We talked about that years ago on the show, and that has never left. And every time it's like fingernails on the chalkboard when I see departments that are not very good at their succession planning, or you don't know who's next up to bat, or you got a lot of weak people on the bench. It makes my skin crawl now, where before I wouldn't even have thought
about it. Yeah.
But the impact that Chief Haig, that powerful voice is for us. Succession planning, not just in theory and not just in, it's just something that he preaches in articles and stuff like that, stuff that he was actually in the process of doing. And it looks like now is still practicing and helping do as well. So I appreciate that seed being planted in me for whatever's worth. And succession planning is I think it's just good biblical things as well. I mean, Jesus was a succession planner. When you think about the 12 disciples, like, okay, who's up next, kind of deal. So I'm just saying you can find probably a whole lot of different significant things over the years with different great people in our history that when they had proper succession planning, that system stayed strong because they had a great succession plan. So I'm always be grateful for that seed being planted by Chief Haig. So in our first segment, I wanted to kind of set the stage on what happened during that day. So we're going to talk a lot about walking through that day when we were there, and so we can get this feedback from these two gentlemen because they got a pulse on their troops that were in the room, their conversation, and then did it hit the mark of what they envisioned in inviting us there in the first place. So that's kind of what we'll be covering. So Chief Hagan, you reached out after the workshop and had such a powerful impact on the experience of what went on beyond the classroom. So can you take us back to that day and what stood out the most about rescuing a leader inside of you, the East Dubuque experience?
I think for me, the fact that we had folks that were there and that were engaged and wanted to be there, that's not a surprise. We got really great folks at East Dubuque, and when you get into something like this, they're in the game. But I think the thing that stood out to me the most was their willingness to participate in the interactive scenarios that you guys took them through. That almost a case study review. And I know from the teaching that I do with East Dubuque, those guys, they love case studies. They constantly want to talk about that. They want to learn what's going on out there in our business, and then how they can apply that. So as you guys were taking them through those scenarios, that almost a case study review of different interactive processes that firefighters go through in the firehouse and the interpersonal dynamics, for me to see our folks role play that and to learn from the role play and to be thinking and engaged was pretty, it wasn't surprising, but it was remarkable in how they performed. And then when you got the opportunity to say, okay, let's critique, let's review. What did we get right? What did we get? What could we have done a better job on? What did we just simply miss the mark on? I was really impressed with the depth of their review and their thought as to here's how I could handle this again in the future. I think that's going to have a pretty profound impact on how we interact with our volunteers, which, as you know, is critical. That interaction is critical both in the not only the bringing them in the door, the recruitment, the new player walking in the door, but once you get them in, leadership's retention of those folks and how they're treated and managed and talked to and things like that. So the take home for me walking out of there was watching our folks learn from those experiences, and what I think will be a lasting impression for them and how they lead our team.
I thought it was really good that they seemed to also be very interested in learning from successes they had and then challenges, like when things didn't go exactly like they wanted them to, or have, planned, or what you might say is a knock this replay out of the park, for instance. There was a lot of engagement in learning from some of those things too, which not that doesn't happen all the time. A lot of times people will say, well, this didn't go like we wanted, and so therefore I'll zone out on that part and just focus on it. So it says a lot about the department to have that going on too. Chief Heim, what made you decide to bring this type of like a personal leadership workshop to East Dubuque, and what were you hoping your team would get out of it?
I think the reason why I was excited about bringing a personal leadership to it was because of the fact that we had, we were back probably about 5-6 years ago, we were really strong, and we had officers in place that have been in place for a while, and they were really good. And then we had all of a sudden, even though we tried to plan for getting people in the department, or moving people up into rank, it's very difficult to get those plans in place in a volunteer organization some days. So we went from having a lot of experience in areas to all of a sudden, because of life changes and people's work where they had to move out of town, getting older, and it's, time to just hang it up or step aside so other people could. We had a lot of movement in a short amount of time, and nobody had a really good opportunity to get good at stuff. They went from point A to point B to point C within a very short amount of time. So they never spent any time in a certain area to hone their skills a little bit and then get better. And so to me, that was a big thing, because they're trying really, really hard. It's just they didn't have all the tools that they could have to move that forward. And so I think that was the biggest driver there, because the people that were there are really good. The other piece to that puzzle is we do have we're a lot of younger people. We're, before you had your group of newer people of 0 to 5 years, you had your good middle group of 5 to 15, and then you had your good group of 15 and beyond. And we're missing that middle group right now, because we lost all that in between. And so the fact that we had a good group of younger people there and a good group of older people there, I think that put that mix together really well. And it showed people that they could do the things that would help them succeed, whether it be in the fire department or in their personal life or in their personal jobs, that would help. And the other piece to that is that I think that it made a lot of us look at our shortcomings. I guess I shouldn't say shortcomings, but the things that we look at as we aren't that good at, and it identified those to be able to work on that area.
Good stuff. Either one of you can answer this for our listeners who weren't there. Describe the culture of the East Dubuque Fire Department, the size, the community, and what makes your team special.
I think our people are willing to try just about anything within reason. They're very open to new ideas and new things. And a lot of times it's, we'll do something at a training session and it'll be different. And it'll be like, okay, that's great. But they don't look at it as like we wasted 2 hours. It's like, that just may not be for us. And then we move on. So they're always openness to try different things and work at different areas, I think is a huge thing with our department.
Good deal. want to talk about the next session, the workshop experience. And so we're going to talk about the different takeaways and the connections that were made during the workshop that you guys observed. During our time together, we emphasized that leadership isn't just a title, but it's a choice. So was there a moment during the session when you saw the ideal click with your people?
I think for me, when I saw the click was, they're used to sitting through classroom sessions. They're used to seeing PowerPoints. They're used to seeing speakers. They're not used to the dynamic group that you two bring to the table. So that was a little bit of I think a new experience as to just how you guys present. Pretty extraordinary. But I think the click was when we rolled into that practical stuff, where it was the hands-on experience, in essence, of them actually having to interact. In the fire service, it's so interesting to me. We spend lots and lots and lots of time practicing and drilling on evolutions, whether that's throwing ladders or stretching hose or putting on SCBA or pumping the rig or pick any of that stuff that we do. And we're used to that and we understand that. And we talk about the difference between training and drilling and the importance of drilling on the drill ground. And that's just built into us. And that's what it is that we do. But what we never do, what we never focus any attention on is that why don't we drill on the hard conversations? Why don't we drill on interacting with our folks, whether that's a drill on how we meet the new guy coming in the door, or whether that's a drill on how do we have a conversation about where you're at in the organization? Is the organization helping you to be successful and meet your needs? Are you performing at a level that is helping the organization serve the residents of our community? How do we have those conversations? We don't drill on those kind of things. And we don't drill on conversations about, hey, we need to talk about your performance and how we're going to modify your performance to be more successful, or when something bad has happened, how do we have those hard conversations as it relates to discipline? So it's really interesting to me that we focus a lot of attention on and understand stretching hose, drilling on stretching hose, throwing ladders, SCBA, etc. But the life in the firehouse, we don't spend any time drilling on, practicing for, and we just think we instinctively know how to do that junk. And we bottom line. And so the click moment for me was to get to see our folks embrace that we're going to drill on some of the stuff that we don't think about. We're going to drill about life in the firehouse, the things that are difficult, those difficult conversations, interpersonal dynamics. And so that was for me that click moment as to see them realize, hey, you know what, this is really important. And it's interesting. I just did a class or a training with the group this past week where we were talking about field training officers and onboarding of our new folks, and we actually employed some of those tactics of we're going to practice conversations. We're going to experience the interpersonal dynamics. We're going to talk about how we meet and greet, how we set expectations. And I think your training set a great example for us to piggyback on that just this past week. And as soon as I said, hey, we're going to role play this conversation, I didn't get the, what are we going to do? They were like, we're gonna click into the work that we did with the Conley brothers. And in fact, I had one of our individuals said, as we were going through, and he wanted to stop and kind of reset and take off on a new thing. He's like, well, can you like do that thing David does where it's like action, cut, and then we talk about what it is, action, cut. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna have to channel my inner David here. I'm not sure I can pull it off, but we it was fun for me to watch. Just even this past week, the takeaway from the work that you guys did, and it was pretty remarkable. So that was the moment for me.
What about you, Chief? Huh?
I think mine was similar. The moment that we went from going through the slides to the first role play with the customer in the cafe. I think that was the area where it clicked for a lot of people to take what they were seeing and put it into play, because they didn't have that. As we went through, even from my perspective, going through the slides, it was like, okay, I'm getting it. But then it snapped for me too when you had the people up there doing the role play of, hey, this is, I'm the one that owns the place. My cook is back there doing this and all that stuff, and how that all came together. I think that was the big turning point that day.
Yes, there's a difference, I think, between the what they say. There's a difference between learning and training. And learning is, really kind of academic, where you get the slides, you get the information coming in, you say, yeah, that makes sense, I get it. But training is more like kind of getting your hands dirty, getting involved, being up there, feeling your pulse race when your buttons get pushed, and when the heat is on. And that's the beauty of, and the thing that I think people love about the technical training, is that you get kind of put in that space for a minute. So it's learning through getting that feeling. And I think we don't do enough of that when it comes to stuff like emotional intelligence and interpersonal interactions and stuff, and that's one of the things that we do, try to make sure we do. We did a lot of talk about emotional intelligence and self-leadership and things like that as the foundation for building stronger teams. And so, how did you think a lot of that conversation and that kind of thing, resonated with the team? I know, Chief Hake, you were talking about some people sort of wanting to go back to that sort of training, but just in what ways, if any, have you seen that kind of those themes of emotional intelligence and self-leadership resonate with you guys?
I've seen, I think, better conversation recently. More interaction, especially with the group of people that were there. Seem to have a better interaction, better conversation piece some days. I think it showed how to go about certain things and figuring out the right time to have that conversation. That's one of the things that I've always struggled with, and I try to figure out that right time to have that conversation, so it's not the we come back and all of a sudden we're going to headbutt because we're not in the right frame of mind to have that conversation. And I think that has helped me to a point. I'm still working at that area, but I think it's helped everybody to the point that was there is, hey, let's have a better interaction. Let's not worry about, okay, if I say something it's going to necessarily hurt your feelings. They understand that they're getting the understanding of that personal professional area. There's that line, and how to know that just because of what I'm talking to you about here doesn't affect what I'm talking, or doesn't affect over here.
For me, what's been a noticeable change since the training is that, and I would say it's that growing experience. All of us go through that, and we're continuing to learn, and we experience things and we learn from that. And well, at least hopefully that's the way it goes. We experience something and we learn, and we grow. And what I've seen since the training is the increase in transparency of our folks in their conversations. I've had multiple conversations with some of our folks on projects that I'm engaged in committee work and things like that we're doing within the department, and folks being willing to say, hey, can you help me with that? I'm not at the best at that. That's not my strong suit. I'm really strong over here, but I have a weakness here. You're strong here. Can you help me do that? And the willingness to share that openly has been a change. In the past, I think, like all of us, none of us feel comfortable saying, "Hey, man, I suck at that. Can you help me? Can you help me figure that out?" And so we walk through that almost posturing of we don't want to let anybody know where our weaknesses are at. And what I've seen since the training is much more willingness to be transparent and say, I just really need your help here. Can you help me figure this out? Can you help me grow? Can you help me develop? Because the mission is about the service that we provide to the residents and visitors of the community. And I need your help. And I don't need to be, or I can't be, I recognize I'm not an expert in every area, but together, collectively, we can be really good. And so I've seen a change in discussions with our folks that attended the training as it relates to that, and their overall willingness to share where they're really at, comparatively to we're gonna hide it and not let anybody see, behind the curtain, if you will. And I think that's been pretty extraordinary stuff that I just flat put on you guys and the work that you guys did.
Mm-hmm.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's a great impact. Something I was thinking about when you guys were talking a little earlier. I want to forget the point. And I know you talked about, it's what we do. We drill on the training ground, and people, a lot of times firefighters tend to be real one-dimensional about that. If it ain't getting my hands dirty, if it ain't blowing something up, if it ain't getting my helmet and my equipment burnt a little bit, it really wasn't a good training. If you say anything about, interpersonal relationships, workshops, and things of that sort, we kind of say, okay, we'll figure that out. Imagine we flipped the script with that and said, the train on the drill ground is, we'll figure that out. It would, you would be laughed right out of the fire service for even thinking like that. But we need to continue to change the culture in understanding. And the reason that it's hitting me more now than it did when David and I first started this, almost 15 years ago, is that it has evolved. And I'm not saying we had a vision of this, but it has evolved to like, wow, we can really figure out where we can really help, because as generations change and evolved and turn into some of these practices that we don't recognize. Sometimes we may criticize them or learn, but we definitely have to learn how to embrace them, because they all become part of our team. Now, more and more, we need to be understanding these human interpersonal relationships even better, because the same attitudes and practices that we grew up with years ago, decades ago, don't always apply as well today. And if you're still trying to get that team cohesiveness or that department cohesiveness, then taking that dysfunction to the community and thinking all we have to do is just be good at what we do with tools and apparatus and stuff, we're missing a huge critical piece in that. And just like I always said, we can't get it right at the firehouse. How we expect to get it right in the street? So we're rolling the dice with that, and we got to be careful. And that's why I'm glad you guys recognize how important it is to not only have that drilling on the training ground, but also take that training ground to the classrooms or the workshops or whatever. And one of the things David and I always say, it's a high class for your mind. We don't want to be let's check the box, go through this PowerPoint. Okay, this is how you have successful interpersonal relationships. Everybody got it? Okay, I know you sat through 8 hours of death by PowerPoint, but at least we check that box. No, the reason we push the way we do, the reason we make you get up out them seats and get the blood flowing, the reason the whole afternoon is dedicated to the practical aspects of it, and we don't let you off the hook with just saying, "Oh, you did a great job." You know, you might have to deal with some pushback, by a secret weapon in David Conley's, because we want that mental fulfillment of you working in that classroom, that hot classroom, to be just as fulfilling as you did when you got your turnout gear dirty at the hot class in the drill yard. So we're trying to match that as much as we can, even though they're two different type of dynamics. Our vision is to make sure that the exercise of thinking through, the critical thinking, the learning something, the aha moments, or that you and I had there, is just as important here. And to wrap up that point even more, you would never think, okay, we practice throwing ladders, or we practice interior attack. When did y'all do that? 2 years ago. Oh, okay, so we're okay. You wouldn't think of that. You're going to do that often, maybe yearly, maybe quarterly, whatever like that. So we're trying to make sure that we kind of infuse this type of deal, like, hey, when last time you had, high class for your brain, be it the Conley brothers or anybody else who you think can fulfill that? Oh, that was 2 years ago. You probably need to have the same kind of drive that you did, whatever, because anything that rolls the dice, any critical part of our holistic firefighting experience, we not only hurt ourselves and our team, but we hurt the community as well. So I just
But
wanted to say,
that being said, too, that's the truth, and we talk about that a lot. Especially always like when Larry talks about that, high class for relationship and interpersonal things. When you guys were experiencing either like up there or just within the room on those teams, just like the immersion of those replays, I think a lot of people get kind of it's a bad word to say to people who run into burning buildings, but they get a lot of scared of interpersonal workshops and things like that, get intimidated by it. But you guys and your whole, group that was there boldly and bravely went through it. And it didn't always go evidently according to plan. And so I just want to know what that experience was like. And I'd like both of y'all to answer that if you would, because the perspectives will be different, though similar, but what that was like for you guys in the room, like the secondhand tension you might have felt from the person who's up there, or what you felt about the strategies you would put together, and then what your takeaways were from it as you saw it unfolding after it was over. So
good, Chief. I'll follow you up.
I can say my takeaways were, there was things that I looked at in every one of those scenarios that you gave. I think I looked at the opposite side of it. I looked at, you take our first scenario, the group that I had was, it was more of, okay, yeah, we need to help each other, but we looked at it as not that it was your problem that you had to do what you had to do, and not that it was the other guy's problem that they had to do what they had to do, but we looked at it as, what's that compromise and how can we help each other? And that's how we went about it. So I think that was my look at it was a little bit different, and it kind of opened my eyes that that's not the case. It needed to be flipped around a little bit to be, okay, he said that he was going to help you, and as long as he gave you some help and then he went and did his job, everything was good. So that was that piece of it. The other piece that I really, really noticed sitting back was, and I said this at that day, is how easy it is to get sucked into just going back in a circle. It was so easy to get looking at the end goal. And this is the end goal that we got to get to here, that it was so easy to get sucked back into just going back in a circle and getting back to the beginning, and then moving back up to the same spot you were at, and then going back and moving back up. It was like you're hitting that brick wall trying to get through. And so I really noticed that. The one thing I will say is I was very impressed with every group and all the people of how open they were, and they didn't get, I mean, there was frustration, but they didn't get upset with the process. They, it wasn't, they weren't upset with you, David, because you kept playing the role. It was, this is, they knew the process and they had to get through it. I think that was the takeaways for me in those areas.
Yeah, I think I said that earlier too. Even I felt that was very admirable watching that, that they were very, very open to learning. Well, what could have been done better, and then, really engaging in that solution finding process, inside the scenario and then outside when we were talking about the observations. Absolutely.
But
what about you?
One of the things that I love about what you guys do, and I think the real strength of the presentation is that it's the partnership between the two of you when you come together to do the work. Chief Conley brings the experience of the fire service, and both from a metro department as well as where he ultimately served as a training chief, a smaller agency like a lot of us work in. But then you bring that acting theater side to the table, and what I think is so critical in how the two of you present is that when those role plays are acted out, it's you make it real. What you bring to the table, David, and how you interact, how you operate with our folks very, very quickly. And I've seen this multiple times as I've worked with you guys. Very, very quickly, it moves from this is a training scenario to this is in your mind. This is a real life scenario. I correlate it in a parallel to if we're at the training site and we're doing a live burn training, we understand it's training, but as soon as you encounter live fire, live smoke inside of a training building, it's real. Well, what you do, and you do it better than anybody I've ever seen, you bring to the training ground in the interpersonal dynamic scenario that realism. It becomes it's like dealing with a live fire, except it's interpersonal dynamic, and without your background, and that's the strength of what you guys bring to the table, is that background of being able to make it real in the interpersonal environment that we're working in. So I love that, and I think that's just a huge part of why I love to work with you guys and the work you do. But what I got to see based on you doing that with our folks and it becoming real is we saw some of our folks that, and I think we all learned from this. They were able to think and engage, and I could see the wheels turning, and okay, how am I going to process this? And some of them did very, very well. And then others that, like on the training ground where we just completely fall apart and we go, whoa, that didn't go well. What are we going to do? We have to come back, we have to regroup. Let's do it again. Let's figure this out. Some of our personnel, flat vapor locked. And it was like, oh crap! Where do I go? Where do I go from here? David's backed me into a corner, and my brain quit working. And we learn so often. We spend a lot of time. We and Larry, you've alluded to this. We go do training, and it's like, oh great, you guys did a great job, nice job. Put the stuff back on the rig. We all feel warm and fuzzy, and we all go home, and blah blah blah. I don't know how much we get from that. Where we really, in my experience, we learn the most is when we don't get it right. I learn a lot more from my failures and my mistakes than I ever learned from my successes. And so, the fact that David, you can vapor lock an officer that is doing this training, and that's my word. You vapor lock him.
It's mine now too.
That individual, and the fact that in one case we had that occur, and our individual didn't get mad, but he went, Okay, I need to up my game. I need to learn more. I need to prepare myself better. I need to think through this. This was a learning opportunity where I was stretched beyond what I've been stretched before. That's tremendous opportunity for our people to grow. And so I just don't think, if you're thinking about the fire ground, which is where we're always really good in training, if we don't stretch our folks in live fire training or throwing ladders or doing whatever it is that we're working at, if we're not stretching them, they're not growing. They're not going to be really high quality when folks dial 911 on the worst day of their life and expect us to come solve their problem. In the training that interpersonal dynamic training, the leadership training, the work that we're doing, if you don't stretch us, then we're not going to grow. And I so appreciate the ability for you to use your gifts to be able to stretch us. And I just don't know anybody else that does that kind of work. So that's it was fun for me to watch. It's not always fun for me to participate and be the guy being stretched by you, but none of us want to be.
Which is why you threw your wife to the wolves.
That was pretty fun for me to say. You go deal with them.
Yeah, babe.
She did a great job, though. She did a great job. I mean, she really did. It's very impressive. Yeah. Let me ask you one more thing, Lee, coming out of that, though, piggybacking on what you're saying. So one thing, and Larry and I have been doing this for a number of years, obviously, and most folks are pretty good, but a lot of times when people get that challenge, they don't have that, let me up my game and learn from this so I can, as a department, let me say that. There's a lot of times, some people who will think like that, but by and large, as a department, for you to have that many people who are thinking on that, that's a real testament to you all's leadership, but then also to the people, who service East Dubuque, in the capacity of volunteer firefighters. I'm just wondering, do you think that's just something that's in the community, in the water, in something you're doing, Chief Heim? I mean, are you feeding them cupcakes in order to act right? I mean, that's an unusual, thing to a degree. I mean, I think maybe since you guys are used to it, living in that community, maybe you don't recognize it, maybe you do, I don't know. But for me, and Larry and I kind of talked about this on the way out of town, that was kind of striking. So I'm just curious as to, is there something that is actively being done, or is that's just how East Dubuque gets down?
I think it's kind of how East Dubuque is. Historically, East Dubuque has always been, they do what they can do with what they have. And they always they've always moved forward with where they're at and how they can improve. They've always gone outside the classes. They've always brought back that training. They've always looked to what is the future. I mean, from the early, I would say the 70s all the way up to today, that's kind of been how they've done it. And they've gone through the hard years of, we don't have hardly any money. We're going to put this stuff together, do the best we can, and keep going, and always progressing to today, where we've been very fortunate we've put things in place, we've built things, we've gotten things to where we're at, and now we can focus on putting that money and that stuff, investing in our people a little bit more. And they're just open about it. And they've always been open about it. I've never really had any pushback on people not being open to different things. And I think that's a testament from early leadership a long time ago to up till today.
Well, and I'll just add to it. I think it truly is the culture of the organization. It's who that organization is. From my perspective, when I decided to go back and be a volunteer after I left the career fire service and retired, I live 3 hours away from East Dubuque, so I drive over, I do my shift, and I drive back. Or sometimes I'm there periodically during the week doing, I'll drive over and do something a couple hours and come back. So it's not an easy scenario for me to always be able to get over there and do the things I do. And I have folks that ask me all the time, they're like, why in the world would you drive 3 hours to East Dubuque to be a volunteer firefighter? There's close to volunteer fire departments. Why would join one of those guys? Here's the reason. It is the culture of East Dubuque that draws me. It is, I want to interact with those folks. I love how they think. I love what it is that they do. I fit well within that culture of the organization. But that culture's been built for years to get to the point that they're at. And so that allows us to do some of these high impact trainings where we can bring you guys in and interact with a bunch of folks who are really, really dedicated to serving the community. And it's just the culture that's been instilled in them. They don't know anything else. They don't know what most of those folks don't get out. They don't get the opportunity to interact with that many other departments on an interpersonal scenario where they really see behind the curtain. And so they don't know any different. They just think that this is how we operate. So those departments that are struggling, our folks, in the most part, they don't even get the chance to see what struggle looks like. They just know this is how we do business. And how we do business is pretty extraordinary for a volunteer fire service today.
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. We can feel that. You guys mentioned that some of the conversations that were at lunch had just as much impact as the classroom conversation. So do you remember what some of those conversations were about, and what do you think struck a chord with them with those conversations?
I think the people that I went to talk to were some of the ones that have been around a while, and they're kind of the harder egg to crack and find out what their opinion is. But they're also the ones that will be upfront and brutally honest, that say, that this was the worst idea, or this wasn't, a good thing or anything. And when we sat and talked to those people, their thought process was, yeah, this is pretty good. We're expanding what we already know or we don't know, and we're getting better. And it was worth the time to come here and interact with everybody and talk with each other. And the other thing is how everybody, a lot of the way everybody was talking was how they were interacting as a group. And we had fun, but there wasn't, oh, you really screwed that up and you should have done it this way. It was all in good humor and bringing everything together. There wasn't that, oh, they shouldn't have done this. They should have done this. It was all, brought together as supporting each other. And that was a lot of the conversation that I heard at lunch.
For me, I sat at a table because we had a few folks from outside East Dubuque that were there, and I sat at a table with those folks. And the consistent thing that I heard from those individuals is that, man, we could really, really use this level of training in our department. We could really see how this would fit, and it was fun to listen to some of their stories of, well, we had this scenario in our department that played out this way, and if we'd have had a little bit better idea on how we have that interplay between the folks that were having a discussion, it maybe would have had a different outcome. So to hear them openly discuss that and talk about, we should be doing this kind of work and training at our department, I think was a real testament to what it is that you guys were doing. And then it just didn't impact East Dubuque, but it impacted some of those other visitors that we had. I guess time will tell. It'll be interesting to see if you guys are back in the northern part of Illinois doing some additional work based on what these guys we're seeing in the class. So that was fun to sit with those folks and hear that.
Yeah, we'll be happy to help you with that. Talk about some of the ripple effects, I guess, and leadership development isn't just a one-time event; it's a journey. So, how are you guys reinforcing some of the lessons from the workshop in your department today? You think?
I think one of the things that I try to do is when people come to me with stuff, I'll listen to them and I'll give them ideas, but I also say this, you got to do it. You're the one that's got to go back and talk to them. You can't, I can't be the one that answers everything and goes to every, comes to every decision on something. I'll help you, but don't try to put it on my plate. And they've gotten, they were doing it a little bit before, but after the class, they've gotten really good with, they'll come and say, okay, I just want your help. I'll handle it, but I want a little guidance on how I should go about it and how I should do it instead of just, going in full bore and not thinking clearly of what I'm going to do. So I think that's been a more positive approach and a more positive thing. And just the overall enthusiasm and attitude, I think, has been a lot better since then, especially with the officers that were there, but also with the younger firefighters and EMTs that were there. It gives they've gotten a lot more out of it, and it's given them a little bit more enthusiasm and stamina to take on issues or take on different things and move forward with it.
Right. Empowered.
Yeah.
If you will. Mm-hmm. Any particular stories that you've heard from people who were there, like this moment resonated with me or what have you? I know we talked about getting some of the feedback from lunch and different things that you guys have taken away. But I mean, was there anything where people said, this moment is really something that I found impactful?
I think the part that I've heard especially with my assistant chief, has been, I need to really continue to work on being able to tell people what to do and how to do it, and not just think that they should know how to do it. I believe he's working on that. And I've seen him get a little bit better. In fact, we had a call last night. It was a medical call, and he was a duty officer, and I didn't know about it. I didn't know he was, and I was getting ready to get in the truck, and he looked at me and he says, "You go over there." Which I think is a testament that he may not have done 2 months ago. He may have let me get in the seat, and he just got in and drove, where he was like, "No, you go over and drive. I'm here." So I think that played a big role with that.
Yeah. Likewise to that story, and I didn't know about that. We as you know, we have some young officers, and in any volunteer fire department, you're gonna have some folks that get promoted young, and so they're learning and they're developing, and so we've got that going on. And I had an experience where one of our young officers, one that I personally think is going to be very, very, very good as he grows in experience. We were getting ready to go out on a training drill. I'm going to drive the engine, which is what I do now. So I get in the seat, and we have one of our senior players. He's 45 plus years in the department, and he jumps in the officer seat of the engine, and this young officer gets in the back. And so I turned to our senior, our 45 plus year guy, and I'm like, "Hey, did you get promoted and I didn't know about it?" And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, "I'm not sure why you're sitting there, because that ain't where you ride. And I'm not sure why our lieutenant's in the back of the cab, because that ain't where he rides." So he's like, "Well, you don't want me to get out?" I'm like, "Yeah." So he gets out, gets in the back of the cab, and our young officer lieutenant gets up in the front of the cab, and I'm like, dude, why are you abdicating your responsibility? You're the guy. Get in the front seat. You know how to do this. We just went through this. Practice this. Be the boss. And, I could see as it was almost like this, like, okay, I'm gonna put on my big boy pants and do the job. And so he had practiced with you guys. You guys talked to him. You educated him. You poured into him. He learned. But there's that fear of, I'm 22 and this guy's got 45 plus years on the department. I don't feel comfortable telling him get out of the front officer seat because that's where I belong. And so he just needed a little nudge. But once I nudged him, he did a great job. And so that stuff just comes from the work that you guys did for us. So that I think that's good stuff.
Chief Haig, you being someone who consults with organizations across the country, how did this experience reinforce your belief in developing the leader inside at every level of the fire service?
Well, you guys have heard me talk about before. Nobody, or rarely, that's a better word. Rarely do I get a call from an organization that wants us to come help them because everything is going right. Most of the time when I get a call, it's because something got screwed up. Something fell apart and leadership is unable to sort it out, is unable to fix it, or whatever it is. And the vast majority of the time when we get there, we start to do some work, we start to uncover what's really going on. What we find is that it is a failure of leadership that allowed them to get into the position that they're in. Now, when I say that, that does not mean, in most cases, it does not mean that they're bad people. It doesn't mean that they got up in the morning and they said, I'm going to go to work and I'm going to screw this up, whether that's volunteer, whether that's a paid department. It doesn't mean that they don't have a passion for the job and they don't have a passion to get things right. It is a situation in which they didn't know. They were never trained. They were never developed. And now they are making leadership decisions. They're doing work that they're not equipped to do. And so based on the fact that they weren't equipped to do the job, there's a problem. It may be a situation of where they've got grievances. They've got an unfair labor practice. They've got a vote of no confidence against the fire chief. Pick whatever the disaster is that they've got, maybe even a legal situation. But most of the time what I find is that the reason they got into that situation is because they were never trained to do the job that they actually are doing. They may have been a great firefighter, but they got promoted, they got put in a position, they got in a situation where they needed to interact, and they just weren't equipped. They didn't have the tools in their toolbox to do the work that they needed to do. And so when I look at the training that is out there, when I look at the things that are available for folks to learn and to build those tools that they need to put in their toolbox to stay out of trouble, they don't exist. There are very, very few folks that do what you do at the level you do it at. And I think if we would, as fire department leadership, if we would spend more time focused on building these skills so that we've got them in our toolbox, I would have less work, which would be just fine. If I didn't have to go into departments and help them figure out how to solve their problems, and unfortunately in some cases, based on solving their problem, make somebody unemployed, whether that's they get released as a volunteer fire chief or they get released as a career fire chief. If they had a different skill set coming into the door, we wouldn't be here. And so I just think in this business today we're missing it, and I think sometimes we're missing it from the standpoint of fire district boards or city managers or whatever the case is. If I put into the budget that I want to spend $15,000 on interpersonal dynamics training, leadership training, in essence, that will be like, so you want to bring in some folks to have conversations and build interpersonal dynamic skills. I don't know if I want to fund that. If I put $15,000 in to send them to live burn training, it's going to get funded.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I just think we in our business today are failing to move forward a lot of the training and personal development things that we need to do, and that $15,000 that I stuck in as an example to do this kind of training is going to cost me $100,000 in consulting and legal fees to get out of the mess that I could have fixed with $15,000.
Right.
Well, we're not marketing that way. We're not sending that forward. We're not messaging that to the bean counters and the folks in leadership. And I think we're making a mistake. And so if I put on my consultant hat, that's what I'm seeing. And I think we can do better.
Let me say this right quick. Based on your point. And here's another paradigm shift that we should be all working on and pulling. If you were to say, we're not going to do an inspection, we're just going to figure it out when we get there. This building, I mean, they've had a few changes. It's always evolving. It used to be this business, now it occupies this space. They've made some conversions, but we'll figure it out when we get there. Once again, we would think that's crazy. Who would do that? And like you said, if you wanted some funding on really beefing up the inspections or the familiarizations or however you would need some extra resources for that, that definitely would be approved and supported, because you would play up if this happens, then the tragedy of losing life, equipment, the delays in mitigation and things like that would be something that would be a really good selling point on that point. And like you said, on the back end, that's a hell of a price to pay for not investing in fire prevention in the first place. That fire prevention mentalities needs to be with, like what you just got saying, with these type of workshops and things of that sort, because that supports our proactive stance on things. And if we have that kind of paradigm shift, then, like you said, maybe on the back end. And I remember, and the reason I know that it is doable if we just keep working that particular thought pattern about it is, remember, fitness used to be optional. You all have been on long enough to remember it used to be like, yeah, we got a few weights in the weight room, but you want to work out, you can, no big deal. There was no intentional fitness program. Matter of fact, you'd be hard pressed, even, because a lot of the weight stuff that we had when I first came on was just, you always that one guy in the firehouse who's, walk around, and he always brought equipment in. Well, you guys need to work out, and so you would use his stuff. But if you want the department to buy it, some departments did, some didn't. But overall, the culture wasn't that. Then they started going like, okay, well, if we have these intentional workouts, intentional, attention to fitness and things like that, then it saves on the back end with injuries and sick time and stuff like that. And that was able to get sold. I don't know how well it's still doing today, because I've been part of those conversations in a minute. But that front end loading of proactive fitness and wellness and core strength and when it's been proven statistically to reduce injury and keep people at work more, then that paradigm worked. But we still need to evolve to the paradigm being addressing what you just said, for that money and that mentality to be for this type of approval. So we spend less days in off because not because we're not physically getting it, but we mentally or people getting suspended because they can't get together and get along as a team, or disciplinary actions and things that sort. You think that makes sense?
I think you're right on track. I love both of those examples, both the inspection as well as the physical fitness. Those are great examples that line up with what it is that I'm talking about. From my perspective, we oftentimes don't, as leadership, we don't message that we're in the people business.
Mm-hmm.
Our people and the people that we serve, and we're in the, some people think we're in the fire business. We're going to extinguish your fire, or we're going to transport you to the hospital, or we're going to cut you out of your car, or whatever craziness we do. The reality of that is we are all in the people business.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spend most of our training time focused on the people business of those that call 911. But the reality, when you look at the data, about 10% of what we do is actually run up and down the street on calls, and 90% of what we do is interaction with our own folks. But we spend almost no attention, no money, no time on the 90%, but we spend a whole lot of time on 10%. And I just from my perspective of the work I do today, if we spent it doesn't have to be crazy, but if we spent some more time and attention on that 90% of the people business of our own folks, I think we would have less problems. It would cost us less money in the long run to defend what it is that we do, and we would serve the residents of our communities much better.
Yeah, that's agree. And a lot of times we don't think about, how much more you're paying to not do a thing than it is to do a thing. And so, like, piggybacking on that, though, if we were talking to a department who was thinking about, trying to do something like that, and particularly, as self-serving as it might sound, something like this workshop. And I'm only saying that because I think there's leadership and then there's personal leadership, which is, like more foundational, and more overlooked or not acknowledged, I should say. But if you you were talking to, and this is for both of you, a department that was thinking about bringing something like this to build that personal leadership foundation and that interpersonal skill building and things like that to their department, what would you say to them in a way that tells them about the value you may have come to realize having gone through the training?
I think that I would say that it is a need to be done just because of the fact that, one, we haven't done it well enough a lot of times, and a lot of the leadership stuff you get is just centered on how to run day-to-day incidents and things like that, and not run the backside of the personnel issues and the personnel part of it. The other piece to that is from my perspective is you can only be in that position for so long before you have to have somebody come and take it from you or move into it. And if you don't give them the younger people there the skills on how to do it, are they really going to want to do it? Are they really going to want to take on that responsibility? And so my take on that would be is they need to look at their organization and go, where do you want that organization to be in the future, and how do you want that to be, and or what do you want that to look like? And part of that piece is bringing in somebody or investing in sending people to classes similar to yours that talk about their interpersonal relationships and how to work that through the system of dealing with people and dealing with people the right way in order to move the organization forward. And that was my biggest driver is we got a lot of younger people that have a lot of worth and have a lot of ability, but they didn't necessarily, and they still may not want to move up through the ranks and just be in one area, which is fine, and that there's a need for that. But this at least gives them another tool to start moving in that direction, and I think that's the biggest piece and the biggest takeaway for me, and what would be my saying to anybody else that's looking at doing anything like that is you need to look at what you want to see for the future of your organization and how you're going to train those other people to be able to succeed you in taking over that organization.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I would just add, I agree 100% with what Chief Heim is saying as it relates to inside your organization, thinking about the succession and how we develop our people. I'll just look at it from the consultant standpoint of what I do every day. It's a cost benefit analysis. If we talk about when do I sell a fire truck? Well, we do a cost benefit analysis on when that thing is getting old, when it's starting to cost me a bunch of money, and when I need to push it out the door because a new piece of apparatus is gonna reduce my overall cost. It's going to be a lot up front, but there's going to be a benefit associated with it. We know how to do this. We do cost benefit analysis all the time. What we don't do a good job at, I believe, is the cost benefit analysis of developing our folks to be able to lead our organizations. And so when I look at this, I look at the training you do, you're going to spend the money someplace. You're going to spend the money because it broke, and you're going to pay a bunch of attorneys, and you're going to pay guys like me to come in and sort it out, or you can spend a whole lot less money, although it may be scary, like buying a new fire truck up front. You're going to spend a whole lot more. You're going to spend your money up front, and you're going to have better benefit in developing your folks up in the beginning and teaching them how to do the job. And if we as leadership look at it in that, if we put on our bean counter hat and look at it in that cost benefit analysis scenario, I think what it is that you're doing, what East Dubuque just went through, would solve a tremendous amount of problems for organizations if they just engage.
Mm-hmm. That's agreed. I agree. Well, let me ask you. So, summing it up in one word, your experience with growing leaders using empowerment, glue workshop, or rescuing the leader inside of you. In one word, somebody said, "Hey, how'd you spend that Saturday?" Well, I would say one word. I'll say one sentence. I only expand it to one sentence because Chief Haig likes to talk. I'm just kidding. But just one. So you said one word. I might as well shut up. No. So
You read my mind.
Right. That's an impossible task. But in one sentence, how would you sum up your experience that Saturday?
I think it was an excellent day, expanding the skills that I have and learning new.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You can do it, Chief.
Two words. Extremely beneficial.
That's very impressive, sir. That's
right.
I'm so proud of you right now. I don't know what to do. Let me just be honest.
He can do it.
Right. That's amazing.
No, that's funny, but no, it's good.
I love you guys.
It would be worse if what you said was like I wish this guy would shut up, but it's always very good and very informative, So yeah.
I'm just he knows I'm teasing him, man.
Right.
Absolutely.
Finally, leadership is contagious. So you got some emerging leaders in your department that make you hopeful for the future. And, it's up to you if you want to do HIPAA laws and not call them by name, or just say, we know a few guys or a few gals that we feel, but by being contagious and you got some emerging leaders, and hopefully we've helped infuse some of what we've taught do you feel like that this helps add to those emerging leaders, and you got some a lot of faith in your succession plan that you'll be doing at East Dubuque?
I think so. I think it opened the eyes to a lot of people that were there of how they can improve and how they can continue to have influence no matter where they're at in the rank and file, whether they're an officer or a firefighter or an EMT. I think it really opened up their eyes of, we can do this if we do it collectively and come together and figure it out and bring it up the right way. And I think that opened up a lot of people's eyes. I've seen from a standpoint of some of the things that we've brought up back in February, March timeframe till today, of some committees that we formed that were, I would say, they did it because I wanted it formed, but I don't think they were really totally on board with it. As time went on, they got better, and then this class came in and it got a whole lot better. I think it went from okay, we're going to do this because the chief wants us to do it, to we're moving through, things are getting better. We had some good conversation. We're getting things done. Things are moving forward. Then we had the class that kind of helped tie together why we wanted to do it in the first place. And it broadened their horizons and opened their eyes.
Mm-hmm. Good deal.
I'll leave it with the chief as a final word. I couldn't agree more with what he just said. It's been remarkable to see.
Mm-hmm. Cool beans. All right, well, gentlemen, we're honored to be part of you guys' leadership journey.
Mm-hmm.
And especially with people in your organization who are trying to rescue themselves, because just like anything else, if we don't rescue ourselves first, then how can we ever think we're qualified to rescue anyone else? And part of the reason that we talk about rescuing a leader inside you, that's one of our programs, rescuing a leader inside of you, the tightrope, and a few others that we have, that we teach, all based on this empower glue model. And each class just addressed different aspects of what we feel are critical parts of that personal leadership journey for all firefighters. And but people love to try to criticize, condemn, rescue, make it all about somebody else, and not constantly look in that mirror. And I understand that. I mean, even though we've been doing this for a while, but I'm gonna tell you, sometimes it's still troubling to look in the mirror and look at those things that I still need to be working on, still need to be checked or whatever. I was telling somebody the other day that I think metaphorically, how we live our lives sometimes, it not only plays out in ourselves spiritually, but maybe in other things in our lives that reflect that physically. For instance, I got a basement that needs to be cleaned. I did a lot of work upstairs and getting stuff kind of redone and repaired and all that. And the basement became a staging area, where the basement used to be the family room and the bar room and all that. Now I walk down there, I got to like fish around to get to the laundry room, And but when I go down there, I be like, man, this is another ugly thing I got to deal with. I got to spend some dedicated time, and part of the reason it's kind of hard to do it because I'm trying not to be on the episode of Hoarders with the basement, because it's like, somebody might could use this, or I remember when I bought this back in '92, or oh boy, this is finished stuff. I still got a floor model TV down there I need to get rid of. And when the guy was in my new furnace last year, he called me up. He said, "Man, I had to move this big Price is Right floor model TV, 1974 Price is Right TV you had there." You bite your tongue, sir. That's an antique. It's going to be a lot of money. But it needs to get rid of, because we're doing flat screen. We ain't doing cathode ray tubes no more, where you can smell the TV and see the lights in the back. But I still got one of them right down in the basement. So But my point is, if we're not careful, we'll be having those internal things you can't see, and they're almost reflecting in other things. So sometimes it's healthy to go clean out that basement or clean out that garage or clean up your relationships or clean up whatever needs to be cleaned up so you can travel light. You can think better. You can get all the minutia and the unnecessariness out of the way. So then you can make sure that you make every step count. My mother has a women's ministry that she's had for a long time called Rest, and it says replenish every step taken. And what she means by that is that, there's a methodology to, number one, meditating and praying. Then that will a lot of times reveal to you what needs to be audited and what needs to be added and what is important and what's not. And when we do that successfully with all of us, then, and we come together as a team, as a group, or as a department, as in East Dubuque, then we make better decisions and we're there for each other better. And then that decision where we rescued ourselves, then now we are totally qualified and equipped to rescue these communities that we serve. Because I love when people say, it's not about me. And they got the shirt and it's about the citizens. And if you're not down for the citizens, then you need to get out the service because it's never about us. It's about them. I agree. And that sounds really good when you're on a podcast preaching that. But just because you said that emphatically doesn't make it absolutely true. We as humans are dynamic enough to rescue ourselves so we can be there to successfully rescue the people in the street. Because if we can't get it right with the people we know, how do we think we're going to flip a switch and get it right with the people that we don't know? It's going to catch up in the intersection one day, your personal victories or your personal failures along with your public victories and your public failures. They're going to clash one day. And they might not clash big. They may clash small and insidiously take you out over time. Or they might clash big one day. And when it's big and you got that big billboard or whatever apparatus you have, whether it's a hook and ladder, and that's in the background, you're really going to be in a pile of crap at that point. So we try to come in to help prevent that. If you don't think it's important, keep doing it. And these days, with so much coming at us, with social media and our phones and this and that, and just all that, it's a lot to process. So now more than ever, we need to be rescuing ourselves as much as possible, and that's the message in the ministry that Dave and I try to spread as we go to East Dubuque and everywhere else to make sure that we're putting the cart before the horse. Just like I said in the presentation, that fools with tools. I'm scared of that. We don't want no fools with tools. We want people who know how to do this thing. And we work with a lot of dangerous equipment. If you can't get this right, I tell you, you drive around a half-ton apparatus and working with saws and all that kind of stuff, but you messed up here, or in here, So we got to be careful with that, and so to your point earlier, Chief Hay, let's make sure that we continue to fight the good fight to make sure that we put things in order more and continue to build that foundation. And when that foundation is strong, we can do great things. But as long as we keep on doing things for the shirt or for the clicks or for the, it's only exciting if we got a shiny thing, we blowing up and getting dirty, is doomed to end up on your desk. And Chief Hay, you probably are in the same position that we all are as firefighters. We do fire prevention to put ourselves out of business, but we know realistically that will never happen 100%. So that's why we're still in business. So at Hague Solutions, even though you might preach on one end, stop doing this because it could affect your business if everybody did it right. We know good and well that Hague Solutions is going to be in business for a long time because bad habits.
I'm afraid that's the case. Yep.
Yeah. So, but thank God you're there to help mitigate. But I will wrap up by saying this, is that I'm really was one thing, and I told David this impressively because being in the fire service, They had volunteers come out on a Saturday. And it was a nice Saturday too. Come out on a nice Saturday. It'd be different if it was snowing and raining and just ugly weather. It'd be like, good, I'm glad we inside. I don't care how boring this training is, but it was a nice Saturday. We had the door open and, it was a nice day. So for people to show up and even though someone were voluntold or whatever like that, but to show up and lean into it on a Saturday in beautiful downtown East Dubuque, Illinois, that was really impressive to us. And that you guys were there, because I told Chief Haig years ago, I was impressed when we was in Hanover Park, because Dave and I have been in a few places where, we walked past on the break and the chief is, Hey, how you guys doing? What's going on out there? Oh, they're doing good. They really need it. Anyway, I got to get back to work here. You guys skedaddle and go do some more of your whatever glue thing you're doing there. We're paying for it. You guys got the coffee, find the coffee? Okay, good. Yeah. We looking like this guy need to be in there. So I was really impressed that you guys participate, because to me it don't make sense for the head of the department to not know what these guys know or the gals know. And then there's got to be a conflict in what his or her philosophy is as the fire chief, going up against the new stuff. Because Dave and I going to teach you some radical stuff. You're going to want to come in with the stakes at the fire, like, Chief, we're making a change. We're not going to take it anymore. We're personal. We got some personal leadership stuff to discuss with you. Like, what they guys teach you in there, So want to make sure that we're glad when everybody's on the same page like that. So, gentlemen, thank you for showing up. Thank you for your reflection. Thank you for your support of our class. Volunteers on the 30. It was a great time, and you guys continue to do progressive stuff. It just goes to show you don't have to have a $1 billion budget and be a very the most popular fire department in the world to do great things. And I didn't know how far East Dubuque was from where you live, Chief, but to go somewhere, drive 3 hours once a week, and basically a 6-hour round trip, that this says a lot for Chief Hyman and his organization for you to make that kind of dedication. And we were glad that we drove 5 hours. Well, it ain't nothing compared to driving 3 hours a week. So you got us beat, but we don't mind. We don't mind it at all. It keeps things in perspective. And after our trip up there, road trip there, we see why. So it's a very quality organization, and thanks for allowing us to serve you guys in that way. And we'll be happy to come back to reinforce some things and help, and some whatever we can do to help. Let us know. We want to continue to feed the successful operation you guys get going here. And if Chief Haig gives his stamp of approval, then that's good enough for the Conley. So
well, you got that for sure.
Mm-hmm. Any closing words, Chief Haig?
No, thanks for having me on, and we appreciate you coming up and doing your training with us. It was an excellent opportunity for our people that we don't always get, so we appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Good deal. Guys. Yeah, thank you. Well, we're going to wrap this one up, and I see you on social media. A little shout out and a little shameless plug. Chief Haig, who I really respect his opinion, read a pretty good article in fire engineering on the website, and he shared it with his people. So check it out. Chief Haig approved, Yeah. So we'll talk about retirement and how you be remembered, and if you've already retired and you didn't do a good job, do some praying. But if you're still working, you got a chance to kind of reset the clock on some things. But overall, most people who retire do a great job and left a great legacy, but we can always do better because we got a lot of people coming up behind us in that succession planning that need to see a great you on the job and retire with some dignity and leave a legacy. And we need more of that because that's the baton passing that's going to keep our fire service strong going into the future. So check it out. If Chief Haig says okay on social media, then that's good enough for me too. Shameless plug. But anyway, check it out. Check us out for in another month or so. We'll be back with another great guest, another great topic. And going forward, we're moving toward the holidays, y'all. It's already toward the end of 2025 already. Gee, Jiminy Crickets is amazing how that happens. And then, but it is what it is. And that's why we need to make sure that we spend each day being the best that we can. And it can only happen effectively and long term. And so we prevent these failures while we're alive. We prevent maybe potential permanent decisions on stuff that we don't have to make permanent decisions about. That can only be addressed when we really show up and address our personal leadership journey. So keep that in mind. Stay safe. Check us out, www.gluenationldc.com. See where Larry and David will be next. They're already letting you start to get ready for early registration for FDIC. So that's just, it may seem like it's next year in the spring, but really just months away. So make sure that you start preparing now so you can join us at the big family reunion. I'm sure these guys will be there, so we'll make sure we connect with them as well. But come on out and join us at the Fire Department Instructors Conference, the biggest family reunion of firefighters in the world, 35,000 plus strong, converged for downtown Indianapolis, Indiana. So we'll see you in April for that. But otherwise, stay safe. Holidays coming up, stay safe with that. The season's about to change, so fire's about to go up. So be careful, get your training in, and make sure that you're around for the next episode of the Larry Conley Radio Show. Thank you and good night.
Good night.
For over 20 years, the Fire Store has equipped first responders with the best in firefighting gear. Discover seasonal savings on the gear you trust and visit thefirestore.com to shop everything